Thank you everyone for joining. I'm very excited for this webinar. I think we have a very interesting topic today, and we are still trying to educate people how can you use AI for your business, going beyond just chatting with AI, but actually implementing AI in your process. And today I have Ed with me. Today we're gonna go through the introduction, but before the introduction, just to share the excitement with the rest of the people. Ed, I know you achieved amazing results with some of your clients by implementing AI in their process. What did you achieve?
Yeah, I would say that, of course, hours saved, I think it's the top, let me change my slide here, is the top metric that we look at. So usually, of course, when we start working with a new client, that client is usually spending a lot of time manually doing a certain process. So for us, measuring like how many hours they are saving in a given month, it's one very important metric. So for this specific kind of system that we have built, so we help our clients save more than 20 hours on a monthly basis, because this, of course, was a very time-consuming process, and we're going to explain you more about this. And also, as we are talking about this system of building newsletters, of building podcast episodes, not only we help the client save those hours, but also we have the clients impact a big audience. So like everything that we created here, all the newsletters, all the podcast episodes are kind of going out and reaching a big audience of more than 50,000 people.
That's significant, and thank you very much. And for everyone, that's exactly what we're going to be going through today. This is going to be a very practical webinar. How did Ed build those automations in order to achieve those results, in order to, he was automating the generation of newsletter and also podcasts. So just to quickly go through the agenda for today. So we're gonna go very quickly through an introduction about Make and about X agency, and then we're gonna look at the challenge that his client was facing, and then we're gonna jump right into a live demo showing how did they achieve those results. Very quickly, just some housekeeping. If you do have any questions, please do not leave them in the chat, leave them at the Q&A. We have a Q&A tab. So if you have any questions, please leave them there at the end of the presentation. We're gonna answer your questions. The webinar will be recorded, no worries. The webinar will be recorded, it's gonna be sent to you by email afterwards. It's gonna be also available on our websites. Also, Ed will be sharing the blueprints for all the automations that he will be showcasing today, so you can copy paste those automation. And also, this is not the first nor the last webinar. We have more webinars that you can find on the website, and we have more webinars coming as well, focusing on AI and on other topics as well related to automation in general. That's all. Let's jump right in. So hopefully you all know about Make, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time speaking about that. Make is an automation platform that enables you to automate your workflows, no matter how simple or complex they are. And it enables you to connect so many different apps. We have more than 1,800 apps at the moment, and so many customers have been using Make for years and years and years. That's all. Now I'm gonna move it to Ed to give a quick intro about X automation.
Yes, great. So yeah, I've been building automations for the past 8-9 years, and for the past 3 years, I've started to do that for other companies as well. So I started X Automation, which is an AI automation consulting firm. So we build automations using automation tools like Make, using APIs, webhooks, custom scripting with Python and JavaScript, and a lot of different AI models as well. We share a lot of content online, especially on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. We have our own newsletter as well. So we are impacting right now more than 30,000 people with everything related to AI and automation. We have worked with more than 100 clients, and we are a team of 7 people here.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ed. And actually, where are you joining us from? Where are you speaking from today?
Speaking from São Paulo, Brazil.
Yeah, because like I did not see anyone from Brazil commenting on the chat. So if you are from Brazil, please, yeah, do write it down. So right now, so yeah, let's go to the challenge that you were trying to solve. So what was it?
Yeah, so yeah, we started working with a client, which is a big real estate company, and one of the challenges that the client was facing was the process of creating and sending out newsletters for their client base, for their lead-based client base. So they wanted to kind of make sure that that client base were keeping like being nurtured, start engaging with the client base, and they were using newsletter for that. It was a monthly newsletter that they were sending out kind of by curating and getting the most important news articles related to real estate, especially related to commercial real estate for local like business in their own city, but also national local national news. And they were kind of getting the content, searching for those news articles. They were writing all the summary for all the new newsletter articles that they were inputting to the email, and also sending out the template, sending out the actual campaign on this case on MailChimp. So all that process of getting those news articles, writing out the content for the newsletter, and actually sending out the newsletter were like taking more than 8 hours a month for my client, which was, of course, was a very time consuming. And there are some months that the client was just didn't have time to do that. So he ended up skipping 1 month or two. And of course, that was very bad in terms of client engagement for his business. And another case study was about the podcast. So the same thing, the client wanted to create a way to kind of have a more scalable way to create podcast episodes related to different subjects, mainly about the stock market. And he wanted to have a daily and weekly podcast show, getting the most recent news articles about the stock market and creating those episodes in a more automated way. Because, of course, if you ever try to put together a podcast episode or even newsletter, you know that it takes time, right? So yeah, so
Like
that
to be
was
honest,
the
like
challenge.
I'm surprised that you were spending only 8 hours per month on creating this news. I would expect actually they were spending much more than that. And I think this is a use case that a lot of companies do have, like newsletter, whether it's collecting content from outside that not they are not the one who are creating it and just sharing this news with their audience, or it can be your own content, right? So we at Make, we are sending newsletter on a monthly basis as well, and it does take time to collect all this content and then writing and summarizing that content and sending it out. So I think this is a very relevant use case for the majority of the companies, and that's why like I was very excited about this webinar. So all right, so that's how did you approach that? How did you automate this process?
Yeah, definitely. So the first part, so for the newsletter automation, we kind of divided this process into 2 different scenarios, 2 different make scenarios. The first one, we connected to Feedly to fetch the news articles that were being published on the categories that we needed to track, right? Again, so related to real estate, related to commercial real estate, to the, let's say, like business economy in general. So we connected to Feedly, and then we were getting those articles kind of through the automation, right? So the first step was to connect to Feedly to make sure that we were getting the right articles. The other step was to classify and rate those articles using AI, and of course using OpenAI. So we wanted to use OpenAI to evaluate each article to make sure that it was a relevant article. So what we did is basically we created a prompt to evaluate the impact of that article in the general category. So let's say that we asked ChatGPT, we asked OpenAI from a scale from 1 to 5, how impactful was that news article related to the bigger category. So how impactful was that article related to the commercial real estate market in general. And then once we passed through the AI, then we added all those news articles into the database with everything that we needed from those news articles. So you meaning the URL, the title, and the rating system that we created using the AI. So that was the first scenario. And then of course, we're gonna do a quick live demo showing you each module here. And then the second part, the second scenario was to once a month create the actual newsletter. So once a month, we got all the news articles that were relevant, that had a rating of 3 or higher. And then we used AI to create the summary of those news articles. Then the summary that we were adding to MailChimp.
Awesome, great. So that was the newsletter. Are we going to jump into the demo right now?
Yeah,
let's do it.
Great. So this is the first scenario. Okay, so as I mentioned, this scenario we connected to Feedly to fetch the news articles that were being published, of course, automatically. So we are fetching all those news articles from Feedly as the trigger point of this make scenario. Okay.
Maybe sorry to interrupt you here, because we know we have few people who not necessarily have a lot of experience with Make, right? So if we zoom out a little bit here and just because this might look very complicated for some people, and just explain how do you build those bubbles? How do you build these bolts for someone who never seen that before?
Yeah, definitely. And of course, this is a bit more simplified version of this scenario. Of course, you can still make it more complex if you want, because Make allows you to do that. But also, it's very simple, because all you have to do is to first create the first bubble, so the first module, as the trigger point of this scenario. So you're gonna go to you're gonna search for the app that you want to connect here to the scenario. In this case, it's Feedly, and then you're gonna look for the type of trigger that you need that's gonna activate all this scenario, right? So in this case, what we are doing is we are using the watch articles triggers. So here you have all the available triggers for this app, which is Feedly. Okay, and then of course we selected the watch articles trigger to activate this scenario here. Great. So with the trigger in place, then we created our first action. So the same way that you have the first module as the trigger, then you're going to have the other modules, which are going to be all the actions that you want to perform on this scenario. Okay, so the first action is with OpenAI, and here is, of course, is basically you are connecting to OpenAI. You're connecting to one of the OpenAI's OpenAI models, so you can pass a prompt, so you can get a response. So instead of going to ChatGPT website and interacting with ChatGPT, you are using the OpenAI API, so you can do that using automation. Okay.
Awesome.
And sorry,
no, that's perfect. Go on.
Good. Okay, cool. So yeah, so for this case, we wanted to first analyze if the news articles was related to a local news or a national news. For this client, we were looking at news articles related to Seattle. So that's why I wanted to identify if this was related to a local real estate news related to Seattle, or if it's a national piece of news, okay? Because then this is going to be important on when we go and start building the summary they're going to add to the newsletter. And then we divide it into local and national. And how we are dividing to local and national. So we are first using a router. It's basically a way that you have to divide the make scenario into different paths, so you can perform different actions according to one output of a previous previous module here. So in this case, I used OpenAI to analyze if this was a local or a national news. So I created a router then to divide the make scenario into local or national news using the output from ChatGPT, from OpenAI, to see, okay, like if the output of the OpenAI contains the word local, then it's going to go to this path here. If the output from OpenAI contains national, it's going to go to this path here. Again, so we can divide and better organize our make scenario here.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after doing that, what we are just doing is rating the news articles on a scale from 1 to 5 in terms of the impact of that news articles into the broader category. So the impact in this case for the national path, the impact of the news articles into the national real estate market, for example, or the national business market. Okay, and then of course, I just want the AI to reply with the rate. So from 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, because then I'm gonna add, then I'm adding, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm adding that news articles with the rating to our database. Okay, so then we're gonna use the database in the second scenario. So that's why it's important to just get the number from the chat, from the OpenAI module. And I'm adding another filter here to avoid adding to the database any article that is rated as 1. So there is no impact. So that is not a relevant article for us to consider for our newsletter.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Great. So moving on to the second scenario here. Let me do a quick zoom. Great. So for this second scenario, this is the scenario that we are doing to actually build the newsletter, to actually build the email that we're going to send out to our audience. Okay. So what we are doing is we are fetching the articles that were published in a given date, so the past 30 days, and also that had the rating, that rating from AI from 3 or higher, 3, 4, or 5. So again, we are only considering relevant articles here for our newsletter. Okay.
So you are able basically to set the trigger to go look at Google Sheet and only look at entries that has been added in the Google Sheet within the specific time frame. In your example, is 50 days, but it can be like 7 days or 14 days, depending how frequently you are sending this newsletter, correct?
Yes, correct. And of course, like this is just the example of the database that we are using. So we are in the source, the URL, the headline, the category, the date, if it's local or national, and the rating, right? Of course, that you can use Makes data stores to do that, but we created the Google Sheets database because the client also wanted easy access to the database. So that's why it was another way to do that. But again, you can do that even inside Make using data stores to kind of manage all those articles ratings and then to fetch them into this second scenario here. Okay.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and then what this second scenario is doing not only is fetching the actual articles from the database, like I mentioned, Then we are just combining them into a text aggregator. So we are basically putting together the headline with the URL on the text aggregator. So just putting the same kind of structure, both the headline and the URL of that news article. And then we are using, again, OpenAI to write a summary of that newsletter, okay, of that article, sorry. First, before writing the summary, we need to select which article are we gonna select to go to the newsletter. Because let's say that we have 10 articles that have a rating with 3 or higher. We need to select the 3 most important ones. And we are also using OpenAI to select those articles, okay? Because we need to make sure that we're only adding to the newsletter the most relevant piece of articles that we have on our database. So we are using OpenAI to help us select those relevant articles. And then, of course, we are on the prompt, we are asking for the OpenAI to actually write the summary of each article that we are selecting. A brief summary on a specific writing style that the client needed. Okay, and this is important. So we can keep the newsletter with the same writing style as my client. So it can sound like as the same person that is writing that newsletter.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, of course, we're just on the prompt. We are also instructing the AI to have the output in the HTML format, because that's how we're gonna pass through the MailChimp API. And then after writing each article's summary, then we're gonna write an overall summary. So that's the summary that's gonna sit on top of the newsletter, that's gonna open the newsletter. So it's a summary of all the summaries of everything that's gonna be covered on the newsletter. So it's a brief summary that we are adding here.
Basically, the introduction to the newsletter.
Exactly, it's the introduction. Thank you.
Yeah.
And after having the introduction, then we are sending to MailChimp. So we are basically creating a new campaign on MailChimp using the template that the client was using. So keeping the same design, the same template design, and then just adding the content using the API, the MailChimp API here.
Yeah. And like definitely, I think like something that is very important here, that in this case you are using MailChimp, but like obviously you can switch that to whatever email campaign tool that you are using, right? So if you are using a different tool, you can use that. The same thing for Google Sheet. If you don't want to use Google Sheet, you can either use data stores at Make or another tool as well.
Yeah, correct. Good point. So again, this system can work with a different database like data store. This system can work with a different email marketing provider. It can be MailChimp, it can be ConvertKit, it can be ActiveCampaign, it can be any other one that you can use to create those email campaigns automatically. It can even work with Gmail. So if you just want to send out a very kind of basic and simple newsletter using Gmail, that's probably the easiest way that you can start building a newsletter, right? So if you want to start building an audience, if you want to start talking to an audience, engaging the audience, that's a very easy way that you can do to start getting the content and sending out the emails to your audience. So you can even work with Gmail.
One thing that we are doing internally here at Make, that we're sending it to Slack. It's not even an email, just internally for the team who are following some specific topics online. So you can like, and every week, like this is the summary of the news that was published about this specific topic. Let's say AI, for example, and we're just sending a Slack message every week in one Slack channel. So there are different applications that you can use this for. And also, like for me, what was really interesting is the fact you see how many OpenAI modules that Ed was using here, right? So normally you don't need to go to ChatGPT and then write a prompt and go write another one. Actually, you are automating that. You're once like every step you're going back to OpenAI automatically to ask another question or add another prompt, and it gives you another output, and then you use this output to in the next step, which is definitely looks like this is how you can make use of AI rather than just going there and
Yeah.
chatting with it.
Yeah, 100%. And this is something that I always tell my clients, like, if you are just using AI, you are still doing manual work. You're still going to the ChatGPT website. You're still inputting like the data. You're still writing down the prompt and everything. So it's still a manual process, right? But when you start combining AI with automation, that's when you start building some powerful systems. As you can see, I'm using AI to create the final output of this process, which is the newsletter. But I'm also using AI as a way to organize the scenario, like as a way to filter out the things that we don't need, and as a way to divide into different paths. So AI is not only being used here as the final output, but also to better organize the entire system, the entire automation here.
Cool. No, thank you very much. Again, just reminder for everyone attending, if you have a question, please add it to Q&A tab. We're going to answer them at the end. And also, Ed will be sharing the blueprints. If you're interested, he's going to be sharing the blueprints as well, so we can copy them. All right, awesome.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Great. So next is the podcast automation, which is very similar to the newsletter one. So for the first step, we basically use the same structure because as you guys could see, we are kind of curating and fetching news articles, evaluating all those news articles, and then adding to a database, right? So the first part of the podcast automation is basically the same. What's going to be different is the second part, right? Which is basically instead of adding those news articles into a email marketing provider like MailChimp, we are doing that for a podcast provider. In this case, we're using Sprinkler, but before adding the content to the podcast, we need to convert the content from text to voice. And we had to use a solution like 11 Labs to do that, right? So that's why, again, this is a very simplified version, but this is basically very similar to the other automation that we showed.
For
Let me
me,
close it.
that was quite interesting for me, because this is basically an audio newsletter, right? Because some audience do prefer reading, others just prefer listening. They can be listening to it during their commute, for example. And I think again, this is another usage of AI, not just summarizing, but actually or just creating written content, but creating audio content. So like you're using Apple Labs here, and again, like at Make as well, we have been experimenting with different AI to produce audio content, and like the quality is getting better and better and better. So it's definitely a very interesting application to serve the different kind of audience that you have, because not all your audience are the same. So no, like I'm
Yeah.
very, very excited to also like see how did you implemented this part with the audio content.
Yeah, definitely. And again, as I mentioned, the first part is basically the same. Again, we simplified for this webinar, but you can see that it's basically the same. We are just talking about a different topic, about a different category, which is the stock market. But what's going to be different is really the second part, right? So again, it's very similar. And if you are building both processes, so if you are building the automation for both newsletter and podcast, you can even use the same make scenario, but creating like different paths using the router, right? So one path go and build and create the newsletter, and the other path go and build and create that podcast episode. So again, this is basically the same structure. So we are fetching the news articles from the database. We are using OpenAI to create the subchart to kind of select the news articles that are more relevant. And then we are creating the summary. But then instead of just adding to MailChimp, we first need to create the voice from the content that we are creating here on this module. So we are using the output to send to 11 Labs. And then, of course, on 11 Labs, you can select the type of voice that you want. So you can have your own settings. But we are using 11 Labs to do that, to create the voice that we need for this podcast. And then we are using Spreaker as our podcast platform to publish the episodes. And then we are using the HTTP module here from Make, which is basically a way for you to do custom API calls for other platforms that yet doesn't have connection to Make directly, but you can still connect to those platforms using the HTTP module for the API calls. And we are sending an API, a post request to create that episode using the summary and using with the output from 11 Labs here.
Brilliant, brilliant. And maybe before actually moving to the question, I have a question myself, which is reviewing that content. So like in the previous scenario, for example, you were showing sending that content or building this newsletter in MailChimp, but you still have the option either to send it right away, or you can just create the newsletter as a draft so someone can go and still read and review and make any changes, right?
Yes, correct. So you can, of course, save just as a draft, so you can just take a final look, just do any edits if you want before sending out to your audience. Or if you are good to go, then you can just set the campaign as live automatically from the Make scenario.
Awesome, brilliant. And yeah, so I think that's it. I think like just reminding what you managed to achieve, because again, like I keep saying, creating content does take time, especially like if you are speaking about collecting different kind of content from different sources and having this summarized and written, or even having this recorded as audio. This has much more time and process to it. So I think it was amazing result that you achieved with the client.
Yeah. Great.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So again, like you have here actually the blueprints. You can already go to the link to get the blueprints. And the other thing, if you are not a Make user yet, you can scan the QR codes and you will get 2,000 operations for free if you are new to Make. And now we're gonna move to the questions. Please, if you have questions, just add them into the Q&A. And I'm gonna read them out to it. Or something someone like was asking, Conrad's asking, which emailing system would you recommend?
Which mail system? Definitely not MailChimp. One good thing about MailChimp is the API docs is great, right? But I personally don't like it. I think it's the most like user-friendly one. Like I use, for example, for my business, I use ConvertKit. I think ConvertKit is great. But yeah, I would go with ConvertKit or ActiveCampaign, which is also another one that is good. But yeah, I like MailChimp works great with API, but it's not the most user-friendly one out there.
I mean, from my side, I think what I would say that like every platform has its pros and cons, and like it fits different users, right? So like MailChimp might be the best option for you depending on your needs, and at the same time it might be the worst option for you if you have different needs. So I think like this is a very like question that really depends on your needs. I don't think there is one system that is best for everyone.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
So is still Conrad as well has another question. I'm not sure I understand it correctly, but he's asking why you use on OpenAirStep chat completion rather than the message to assistant. I'm not. Do you understand the question, Ed?
Yes, understood it. Yes, of course. just also to explain to everyone. So with OpenAI, you can create your own assistant, right? And then you can message that assistant that you created, right? And then when you are creating the assistant, when it's basically you are creating a custom AI assistant trained on whatever you are trying to do, right? So you can upload files, you can have custom prompts. But for this case, the client first, this was built like I think from the beginning of the year. So we didn't have yet the option of messaging the assistant on here make, but also the client wanna like just to use the like let's say the open chat GPT assistant to also get information like from the internet and get other perspectives. So, but yeah, you can definitely use the message assistant. I would say that right now, since the past couple of months, I've been using more the message and assistant rather than the chat completion, especially if we are talking about using OpenAI to analyze or to create something that is very unique for a particular company, right? So you can really kind of better control the output. But yeah, it's a good question.
Understood. It's cool. Thank you. Stephen is asking another question about the tooling. So I think speak about limitation on number of articles, like speak about Feedly specifically. So I think speak about the limitation. I think this is gonna depend on the tool that you use. I think you're gonna need just to go to Feedly itself and see the pricing and what is available in the free plan or not free plan. I think to understand that. But one part of the question which I think it can help answer is what was the settings that you had in Feedly? Maybe you can show that part in the scenario.
Yeah, so basically on Feedly, I created a folder, a section, and then I selected all the different news sources that I wanted and the different categories. So all the category settings, I did that inside Feedly. So if I go here, I created this category that I call it, like in this case, others automation, because I just want to make sure that the client knew that this kind of section, this folder, was related to the automation that we were creating, and all the news sources, all the different kind of tags and categories on Feedly, I added into this category here, this folder. So the kind of this news sources selections, the category selections, it happened inside Feedly. So that's one good thing about Feedly. Of course, that depending on the plan, it can get a bit expensive, but it's good that it's very easy to organize the type of articles, the type of news sources that you want inside Feedly. So then you're gonna make sure that all the articles that are triggering the mixer are the articles that you selected from the news sources that you selected, and the same for the categories.
Cool. Great. Thank you very much. And the next question also from Stephen, asking about the second automation that you have, and is speaking about searching within the Google rows and doing filterization on the categories. So like he's asking like how did you do this process to select the best news? Because like some of them all have like 3 out of 5, but you still need to select only 3 or 4 or 5 depending on how many articles you are going to show in the newsletter. So how did you manage to select the best ones?
Yeah, so I used the OpenAI for that. So I will kind of, on the prompt, I just asked, okay, like we have these options here. What would be the top 3 news articles related to the real estate market that we should add to the newsletter that are the most relevant ones for us to talk about the real estate market. So of course that with the rating system, we are able to filter out, like, to avoid passing through like articles that are not relevant at all. But of course, depending on the month, there are some months that we're going to have more articles that are relevant. And then we also use OpenAI to select the top 3 or top 5 ones that we want to add to our newsletter.
Great, thank you. And Steven was asking like if you can run the second process live. I'm not sure if you are able to to do that to show the actually the live running scenario?
Yes. No, I'm not gonna do that because again, we kind of modified it a bit to simplify it for this webinar, and also it is connected to my client's MailChimp account.
Makes sense.
So yeah, but again, I'm gonna share the blueprint for you guys so you can just import the blueprint. So if you let me show you how you can do this. So if you go to here, you're gonna just import the blueprint here, and then the scenario is gonna just pop up live here for you to save it and run on your own. So yeah, so you can basically from the link that I'm gonna share, you can download the blueprint and then you can import here using this option here.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And I think you already just answered the question after that, which is, can we show the blueprint? Yes.
Yeah.
And Andrew said, yeah, Andrew, I think a very good point was just we mentioned that you don't need to be only using OpenAI, right? So you can be like adding different LLMs within the same scenario, right? So you can Cloud, Perplexity, OpenAI, like you can add multiple ones, which definitely make sense and can be beneficial depending on your use case. So thank you, Andres, for adding this. And I think we also answered that, but just to a quick repetition here. How can you add the human part within this process?
Yeah, so you can add the human part, especially my of course my recommendation would be at the end. So to double check the newsletter that were created, especially of course when you set up as a draft newsletter, so you can just review it, do some edits if needed before sharing it with your audience. So I think if you want to add a human touch into this, I definitely recommend adding to the end. So your job would be to just verify if everything makes sense before sending out live. Because then, of course, the automation will do all the rest. So the creating, the fetching, the analyzing, etc. So you can just make sure that everything makes sense before sending out to your audience.
Great. And probably last question here. Is it possible to basically send the newsletter to one specific segment, like within, if you're using MailChimp, for example, you can have multiple audiences or segments. Can you send only to one segment in there?
Yes, you can do that. You can just select the one segment that you want to send that newsletter to.
Awesome. Brilliant. Great. Thank you very much, Ed. Thank you everyone for attending and for the great questions. We're going to be sharing the recording. It's going to be also available on the website, and there's going to be more webinars coming. So please make sure to attend as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day. Have a great evening. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you all.